And what's going on, Los Angeles, LAFB fam, Bruin Nation? How we doing on this Sunday morning as the Thriller and Madman, your UCLA Bruins dynamic duo, covering all of your football needs on the one and only LAFB network. Before we jump into it, Thriller, it was great to spend time with you yesterday. We got to watch the game together Sunday morning here. How you feeling? We won't talk about the game just yet. I'm just asking, how is Thriller, the person doing? How'd you sleep last night? How's Sunday morning looking for you before we get into it?
It was good. It was a chaotic work week at the office this week. So just getting at least a solid night of sleep. I didn't even get a good night's rest the night before. It's good, man. I got my fantasy football draft tomorrow, so that'll be nice. But, man, we got a lot to talk about on what happened in this ball game. And, I think we got to just change the expectations of everything we're seeing at UCLA because it was rough to watch. And I was with some of my favorite people watching the game last night, you and your pops. And I had to leave early. I couldn't handle watching what was transpiring on that football field last night.
Yeah, Thriller. Well, let's just get into it. Great segue there. Obviously, UCLA opens the season at home with a 43-10 bludgeoning at the hands of the Utah Utes. We're going to break it all down here, Thriller. But I think we both wake up this morning with a sense of emptiness in our hearts and our stomachs based on what we saw last night. We'll start, I think, on the side of the field where this game was truly lost, and we'll sort of work our way out, and that was defensively. And Utah, we'll just throw some stats out there to frame the conversation. Utah, 493 total yards to UCLA's 220. Utah had 287 yards rushing out of that 493. Devin Dampier, obviously the heralded transfer quarterback for Utah, ended up going 21 for 25 through the air, a staggering 84% for a guy that doesn't really throw the ball or known for being able to throw the ball with that much expertise and dynamism. The Utes went 14 for 16 on third down.
Unbelievable.
And, Thriller, there were 9 possessions that Utah had over the course of this game. 6 were touchdowns. 1 was a field goal because the clock ran out at the end of the half, but they could have driven for more. It was a matter of a clock. 1 was the possession they had to run the clock out to end the game that they had a first down on, and there was 1 punt. UCLA had 1 stop defensively the entire night. And the ultimate situation came about that first drive for Utah in the third quarter. Still, it was a 23-10 game. UCLA had a puncher's chance. Utah goes 20 plays for 90 yards, takes 9.5 minutes off the clock. And, oh, by the way, that drive started at Utah's own 10-yard line. 1st and 20 after a holding call. Did not matter. Utah just went down the field and ripped the Bruins to shreds. UCLA had 0 sacks, 0 ability to contain the edge. And, Thriller, I counted after the game. I went back and looked at some footage. I counted about 20 missed tackles last night. Yeah. And the first player just could not make any sort of a play. When you look at the box score, Thriller, you almost have to sort of squint your eyes and change sort of how you think about things, because Isaiah Chisholm last night had 17 tackles, but only 6 were solo. John Vaughns had 16 tackles, 15 tackles, and only 6 were solo. And so what that is telling you is that Utah was able to just move the line and get that first level of defense out of the way. And Chisholm and Vaughns, as a tag team, had to bring down players after 6, 7, 8, 9 yards of rushing consistently. That was an incredibly disappointing showing by the defense, Thriller, and it's sort of back to the ground floor defensively. Now, the one thing I think we'll see is this felt a lot like, and you and I talked about this, kind of the Indiana game last year, that the home opener last year, and you said, what is going on here? Indiana ultimately ended up going to the college football playoff. I believe Utah is in a position to go to the college football playoff in the Big 12. We'll look back that, hey, this was a really good Utah team But even despite that, even if Utah has a top 12 finish and goes to the college football playoff, it was utterly embarrassing defensively last night. Will, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a lot to work with there. For me, if I'm Martin Jarman, if I'm DeShaun Foster, if I'm Elkaika Malloy, if you're not feeling embarrassed this morning after what transpired at the Rose Bowl, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, it was 35,000 people in the stands. More than half felt like it was Utah out there. The missed tackles. I mean, it's just basic fundamentals of football. You go out there, you make a tackle, see player, hit player. We talked about it with our preview with JT. It's like this offensive line is one of the best, arguably the best in the country. We didn't have a lot of returning talent on that front seven after losing Schwessinger and Medrano and Toia and Femi. Like, these are NFL bodies, and we're not Georgia. We don't replace these guys overnight, So I think the most frustrating part for me was it looked like we were on a different playing field than they were. Like the class, you talked about the 20-play drive. That's the first time that's happened in college football since 2016. That is 9 years ago, guys. That is how bad that drive was. It started as a 1st and 20 where you should get them off the field at any time. I mean, it just looked disorganized, disinterested. And this was supposed to be DeShaun's kind of debut game, if you will, as we talked about in the offseason. Like, he kind of got a free pass for last year, right? Like, he got into, spring football 2 weeks before it started with the head coach, and he had to kind of scramble to make everything happen. You get the star quarterback, you get a lot of these transfers in, and you're feeling like, hey, DeShaun, he could really make a difference out here in year 2. And it was just flat from across the board. While I saw some encouraging things in the offense, which we'll get to, I mean, it was far from the production we expected from, a star quarterback and a star signal caller in Tino Sinceri. And the generation up front, I'm looking at the tweets after the game, and it's as low as I've seen this UCLA fan base in a long time. DeTone Jones, the former UCLA edge rusher in his own right, he goes, we don't have a front four. Like, legitimately, we do not have a front four as a pass rush. And I don't know if it's going to take blitzing 6, 7, sometimes even 8 guys with the Azanero, former defense that we had that, by the way, was not a structurally sound defense and we complained about for years. But if you're not going to be able to generate pressure and you're missing, like you said, 20 missed tackles, like that is some freshman high school stats right there when it comes to football. What are we doing? And I was embarrassed. I was ashamed last night to be someone that covered. I got text messages from people going like, what is going on? Like, how is this even a feasible outcome for UCLA after this, madman? So, like, while I was excited to watch the game with you and I had an awesome time with you and your dad. Yeah, I mean, I still have that disgusting taste in my mouth. There's no Ben Bolch tweeted this out after the game. It's like, try finding any positives from this game defensively moving forward, because I can't, man. I can't.
No, Thriller, you said it best. There was no positives from last night. This is a total ground-up rebuild defensively. And I think you made a really nice point where you talked about the difference in class and the difference in levels. Like, what we saw last night was an offensive line that is trying to compete for a college football playoff spot. Like, that is to get to that top 12 level, to really compete for a national championship. That's sort of what the line needs to look like from an offensive line perspective, as well as what you saw. Utah was just as young, if not younger, on the defensive line. And we'll get to the other side of the ball. But this championship football, Big Ten football, is built from the inside out. And as excited as we are about having Nico and about having Tino and about having, potentially Quasi Gilmer break out this year and et cetera, and Javion Thomas and Jet and all of these things, this game and this team needs to be built from the inside out. And right now, this is a total ground-up rebuild. And, Will, I think you said it really well. Schwessinger, Toia, Medrano, Femi, last year, 4 guys in the front 7 going to the NFL. Well, look at the year before. Latu, 15th pick in the first round.
Twins.
The Murphy twins, both in the NFL. That's 7 guys that are in the NFL right now in the front 7 over the last 2 years. It's a front 7, and 7 guys are in the NFL over the last 2 years. That's your entire front 7 that you've sort of built up over the last several years. I understand, there were transfers in there and whatnot, but they came to UCLA and they found the ability to get to the NFL because of their UCLA experience. And this isn't Georgia. This isn't, Saban's Alabama. This isn't some SEC power, or this isn't Ohio State, or this isn't Michigan, where right now the state of the program, you can just sort of reload on the defensive line and it's back again. You feel that. You feel that for a year or two. And these guys, these younger guys, are going to hopefully develop in a year or two and then become those guys down the line. But there is a significant drop-off. And right now, Thriller, I was thinking back to, defensive performances in years past, and I can't think of one
rank?
that was this bad last night. Even the level of opponent. Because, Thriller, I was thinking about it. I mean, even that famed Victory Bell game in 2022 where UCLA is playing the Heisman winner in Caleb Williams. I mean, SC got to 48 in that game, but UCLA, that was a different game because there were so many possessions back and forth.
Yeah.
But for a team to get to 43 points, which really would have been 45 if they didn't miss their extra point, for a team to get to 43, 45 points on 9 possessions, and a team that wasn't trying to air it out, wasn't trying to go really hurry up, is just beyond embarrassing, no matter what that team looks like or how good that team is. And so I think there's going to have to be a lot of soul searching here moving forward on what to do. And I think, Will, to your point, defensive line rotation is thin. Didn't have De Villiers last night and kind of felt that one piece even in terms of the rotation. We've talked about linebacker depth beyond Chisholm and Vaughns, where there's sort of a clear cut who else is going to emerge. So you've got a front seven right now that is struggling for credibility, but is also struggling for depth. Now, where you are deep is to our point in the secondary. And do you need to start looking at things a little bit differently? It's one game, and now the next couple of weeks, the schedule does ease up. You got UNLV, you got New Mexico, you got Northwestern. So hopefully these guys can now build up a little bit before the meat of the Big Ten schedule starts. But if you're Ikaika Malloy today, you have to be thinking, how do I generate some semblance of pressure? The edge couldn't do anything last night. Dampierre was dancing 7, 8, 10 yards. He was floating around. He was dancing. It felt like a flag football game out there at times.
What it was, Madman? It felt like a Tom and Jerry cartoon where the cat, like the mouse is just baiting with him, and whatever happens, the cat falls over, he blows up with dynamite. That was Devin Dampierre with the defense. Like everything this guy did completely caught the defense off guard, which is concerning for UCLA. And just to reference, Dampierre last night, 21 of 25, 84% completion rate. Guys, he's not exactly the most accurate passer. Like he was a 57.9% completion rate last year on 390 attempts. So guys, we just were outclassed, outmanned, there's nothing you could take from this game. It's that Craig Sager interview with Kevin Garnett where he's like, you take this home and you burn this.
You burn the tape.
Burn this suit. You burn this film because you're going to get nothing out of it except for maybe a few teaching moments, which should have happened in the fall camp to begin with.
No question, Will. And so we'll see what they can do now. I think, to your point, you're going to have to bring more pressure, and you're going to have to sort of live with the results on the back end potentially as how this moves forward. And that's probably going to have to impact who you put out there in the secondary, because I think you're going to need to have your best bump and run guys, your best one-on-one covers. It can't be guys that are really good in the zone, right? So it changes how you think about the secondary as well, because you have to be able to artificially generate pressure. Otherwise, there's just no chance. Given what we saw from Utah, it felt like those old Stanford teams, of Harbaugh and they just turned it around and just moved the pile, Will, and we just could never get them off schedule. And the few times we got them off schedule, 1st and 20, it didn't matter. And so, it just felt like one of those games where they just jumped on top. They got the ball first. They scored. It took us a while offensively to get going. You look up, it's 20-0, and the game is totally on their terms, and there's nothing you can do about it. Thriller.
Pure belt to ass last
night.
Yep.
Thriller, flipping gears, flipping the side of the field now. Let's talk offense and how the offense did against Utah's defense. I think it's a little bit more of a positive story offensively, but there's still ways to go here. Nico Iamaleava, the decorated quarterback, big debut, 11 for 22, 134 yards, a touchdown and an interception. There were flashes there, Will. I think that what we saw in terms of his mechanics, his ability to throw the ball, but he looked off at times as well. There were some significant overthrows. There were some plays where you felt like he could really make, and he wasn't able to do so. Two in particular come to mind. That opening drive, UCLA down 6-0. You and I saw it. There was like a soft, slant and go. It was like a soft sluggo for Matthews, and Matthews didn't have anyone around him for about 7 or 8 yards. If Nico's able to just sort of softly drop that in, that's a touchdown. He overthrows Matthews. That drive ultimately gets to the Utah 40 and then stalls on 4th and 2. And then another ball, Will, that first drive of the second half, Iamaleava really gets going. He has that QB keeper and then finds Quasi Gilmore 3 times in a row. We get into the Utah side of the field. Again, he has Matthews open, wide open. That's at least a 20-yard gain. You're probably looking at either 1st and goal from the 10, or you're really knocking on the door, misses him a significant amount. And so as bad as things were defensively, Thriller, just to sort of frame it a bit, if Iamaleava makes those 2 throws, you're potentially looking at a 23-17 or a 23-21 game in that moment. Now, I don't think UCLA would have won last night, even if those 2 throws were made, because the defense was that bad. It was just too much strain. But there were moments there where offensively, I think if we just had been able to execute, things would have been a lot closer than the score indicated. I also think, Thriller, that for Iamaleava not having the spring camp, I think you started seeing that a little bit, and I think he's going to take a little bit more time to be able to get that rhythm. He went to Matthews early. Matthews only finished with 2 catches for 22 yards. Quasi didn't have a catch the whole first half, and then got 3 catches on that first drive of the second half that made it 23-10 from 23-7, but then didn't have another catch again. And then also I think it took a while for that running game to get going. Iamaleava did a great job scrambling. He was our leading rusher last night with 47 yards on 17 carries, including the sacks. But Thriller, we're going to need to see more from this running game. The 3 running backs, cumulatively 15 carries, 37 yards. So offensive line, the defensive line is the story last night. Offensive line was a little bit better than last year, but still in Nico's first 20 dropbacks, Will, 10 hurries, 10 knockdowns, 4 sacks. So he was under duress a significant amount of time. I thought the offensive line struggled at times. They were also decent at times, but I think overall it's a work in progress offensively. What did you see from that side of the ball?
Yeah, there was some potential there. I think Tino's offense is very reminiscent of, what McVay and Shanahan do in the NFL. Just a ton of motion. You could see the potential he has at being one of the best OCs in the country. I mean, even going into this game, it's not just us pumping up Sinceri. Like the Cover 3 podcast calls it like the second best OC hire in the offseason this year. So like you have a guy coming in with the high pedigree, was able to get Indiana's offense humming. And by the way, Indiana's offense without Sinceri yesterday looks pretty average against Old Dominion. So I still have some confidence there. When it comes to some of the plays he had, the offensive line, I think we can agree, is slightly better than last year, but it's not the unit that we need to really make that next step. You mentioned it, man. It's trench play. This is what this conference is built on. You get the badass offensive linemen and you get the defensive ends that want to rip your quarterback's head off. We had none of those in the game yesterday. And to make matters worse, Nico Prongos, like one of the guys we kind of found, developed. He was a walk-on. He's now at the Stanford Cardinal. So like we don't have him anymore. We don't have the luxury of keeping a guy like that. So as frustrating as that was, I'm not worried about the run game as much, I'll be honest with you, because in a snap of a fingers, we're down 2 scores in that game. And you have to rally back in and start making plays. I thought it was encouraging. Nico, his ability to stretch plays with his legs, it was almost better than I anticipated. If I'm going to get one positive out of this podcast, the ability he can move with his legs out on the football field, he was fantastic at that. And then, yes, 11 of 22. He had the interception late in the game. The touchdown pass to Anthony Woods was beautiful. Just right up the seam, hit him in stride on the right side. That throw right there kind of encapsulates the potential of what this kid possesses, where you hit him right on the numbers. It was a perfect pass. And I'll be honest with you, while Nico may have overthrown Mikey Matthews a few times, how many 5'9" legit wide receivers are there in college football? Right. You have to hit him on the numbers anyways, but at 5'9", that is a significantly smaller circle than your likes of a Rico Flores that's 6'1" or 6'2". Caden Robinson that's 6'3", that was supposed to be on the team last year. Quasi 6'1". 5'9", that's a small window you got to fit that into. And they just don't, Mikey Matthews, we like him a lot. I think he can bring a lot to this team. But he should, my theory is if it hits you in the hands, it may not be a perfect pass. You got to bring it in. That's the rule. Especially with these new gloves nowadays where you can one-hand and make catches with ease, according to this wide receivers. It hits you in the hands, you got to bring it in. That's my one scenario. It may not be a perfect pass, but coaches don't like to hear excuses, and neither do fans. So for my money, I thought Nico showed the potential of what we expected last night. Obviously, our game plan kind of went in a different direction after just with the snap of the fingers, we're down 2 scores. We got to get everything rolling, and the rest of the game proceeding as it did after that. So, yeah, man, my 2 cents is that, Woods looked good. I'd like to see a little bit more Woods and Jet Thomas running the football next week. I think those guys can really do some good things. And then maybe the Quasi not getting targets in the first half. I don't know if I really understand what was going on there, because for all the talk, this kid was talking Bolitnikov, and I'm all for people having big goals and big aspirations. We got to see him get the football.
Yeah.
And to go a half, especially when you're down, it's one thing if you're up 13-0 and you're
running the ball and you're managing the game, but
when you're down and you're not getting the ball to your playmakers, that's where I'm a little concerned and confused. I thought that was very, reminiscent of everything we saw, just the stew of what it was, the overall stew that had a stench to the fan base long and wide without LA.
Well, Thriller, it's a great point there when we talk about Nico. And I love the motion early, to your point. There was really some dynamic motions early in that game, the first few drives. It was almost like a sea of motion, guys going to the left side, guys going to the right side, all at the same time. A lot of confusion at the line. To your point, that throw to Woods on that weak side wheel route where, Nico rolls to the left and then throws back to his right. There's a lot of skill that's involved there, because so many quarterbacks only want to roll out to their strong side. That required Nico rolling out a bit to his weak side and then peppering it right to the other side, right in Woods' hands. He finished it. Woods ended up as the leading receiver last night, Will, with 3 catches for 48 yards, highlighted by that 19-yard score. So I think there is a lot to like there. Hopefully he sort of works his way in with Gilmer. I thought that drop, Will, was a big one. Gilmer hit, on that 3rd and 4 that led to the field goal. Gilmer makes that catch. You're sitting on 4th and 1. You're probably going for it. And the way Nico was running the ball, I think you got to like your chances there in terms of being able to extend that drive. And then I think, to your point, look, he was overthrowing a guy who was 5'9", especially when you're in practice and you're taking reps. You're like, okay, 6'3" guy, 6'1" guy, 6'2" guy, 6'3" guy, and then 5'9" guy. To be able to have to change your ability to throw just for one player, I think is hard. And I think the muscle memory was for a taller player. I know you and I have talked about Jaden Wilson potentially being in that slot. I think the team is going to have to explore that, particularly these next few weeks. Matthews is terrific, and he's going to play a role. But I think as that primary, one of those first 3 starters, you got to be thinking potentially Jaden Wilson. And then the fact of the matter is, Will, last night TMA 0 targets. 0 targets for TMA. So I think Nico's still sort of finding who he wants to go with in terms of who he's comfortable with the ball. But again, Thriller, you said it, blink of an eye, you're down 20-0, and you have to be constantly under pressure. I will say Nico's far more athletic than I thought, in terms of his ability to run the ball. He looks like a gazelle out there. We were talking about with those long strides. And it just felt like last night he was about to get sacked and he sort of rolled out, and then he's sort of gaining on the defense. It was really remarkable to see. He had a couple of keepers that were really nice. And despite the 4 sacks, he had 47 yards rushing. So if you take away the sack yardage, Will, you're looking at someone who was closer to about 70 yards rushing last night. And I think you can use a lot of that in terms of misdirection with the zone read game, and that can sort of open things up. I thought a few bright spots as well. Habermill got a reception. Jack Peterson got, a few catches. So I think his ability to sort of pepper it around will be really good. But I think you need to be able to get a game more on your terms. And hopefully UNLV, lesser opponent, I expect Nico to, after this first week, really ball out. I think we're going to put a lot of points on the board next week. But this game just did not work out for UCLA. Thriller, let's take a step back. Okay, we talked offense, we talked defense. Let's talk state of the program. And it's only one week in, but we have to do it. And when you look at where this program is right now, we had a lot of recruits in the house last night. Cannot, sort of be in a position feeling good about what those recruits saw on the field. You mentioned a few things. Practice has been pretty closed off. Ben Bolch, Benjamin Royer have been rather critical of that. DeShaun has a philosophy on how he wants to approach things, but it is much more closed. It is much more under the radar. It is harder to market this team. It is harder to create juice around this team than, say, the team across town or other teams in the Big Ten. And then when you couple that with only 35,000, at the Rose Bowl last night, I think it was more than 50% Utah. So you're looking at about 16, 17,000, maybe 15,000 Bruins out there as a result of a lack of marketing. And then you see a performance like that opening night. You have a hard time believing this team is going to get any sort of emotional momentum from their fans, from the crowd, from the external factors for at least the next several weeks until Penn State comes to town. And how does that just keep sustaining, sort of week over week, month over month, year over year? Where do you feel right now? And I understand it's an emotional time. It's game one. We just had the loss last night, but we've been on LAFB since 21, since, DTR's second to last year. Where do you feel this program is from then to now, and how do you sort of see the future right now of UCLA football for 2025 and beyond?
Man, I mean, it's hard for me to project positively after what we saw last night, if I'm being 100% honest with you. Like, that was a pretty low metric. It's one thing when you open against Bowling Green a couple of years ago, and it's like the hottest recorded day in LA and nobody wants to be at the game. This is a Saturday primetime game with a legit team that, they're unranked, I know, but they have a real shot at winning the Big 12 this year. That's a real fact with Utah.
Nationally televised on Fox.
It's not like there's traffic, too, at that point, too. It's 8 p.m. start time, Pacific Standard. So you can get in there and make things happen. I mean, we make trips as Angelinos to the Dodgers that are far from the west side like we're at, or the Lakers in downtown. It just it saddens me, man, because while I know DeShaun is trying to do a lot of great things for the program, getting Nico got us a little bit of life there. This recruiting class looks pretty solid on paper, the complete lack of allowing the media to do their jobs right now, where winning, you come out with a statement, winning will be our marketing. You got to scrap that, man, after what we saw last night, because that was as thorough as an ass kicking as any UCLA team I've ever covered or watched had. Like, that was the freshman team against the varsity right there. That was bully ball, literally out there on the football field. We have to be honest about this stuff, man. Like, it sucks. I hate coming on here and talking about this in such a negative way, but like, what was that last night? Like, there's no coachable moments off that. You mentioned the 20 missed tackles. Like, that is the fundamentals of football, blocking and tackling. And you don't have any guys that can really come up and make plays like that. It's just, man, it was frustrating to watch, bro. And we got to hold somebody accountable. Like, this is a real problem we have. I need more press from the program. I need Jarman trying to just give out free tickets if nobody's buying them at this point. Find ways to get students to the game. Like, find ways to get alumni back and interested. And since the Chip era has been here, and that is Chip's number one flaw, we can all agree with that. He can call a hell of an offense, couldn't do a lot of other things, right? The lack of interest in this program is starting to look like a death sentence if we do not figure this out faster. And that's just my 2 cents on it. As somebody that loves and cares, has grown to love and care about this program. We got to be honest. We got to be realistic. That was pathetic what I saw last night. And Martin, I don't know what you're going to do to change that, but we need to get something done fast because that is as uninterested as a program as I've seen from a prestigious school like UCLA.
No, well said, Will. And we are nothing if not honest, and because we love and care about UCLA so much, and you are at the very top of that list. You know how much I bleed UCLA Thriller. I couldn't agree with you more. We can't pretend that, we are not going to just be okay because we're UCLA and the things that worked in the 80s and 90s are going to work now. This is a completely different sport. And with NIL, with the transfer portal, with the amount of investment that is required to really compete at an elite level. And so you're looking at certain schools across the country that are making decisions about what all in means about going in the football program. And UCLA has to decide here, are they willing to go all in? Because it's going to take a lot. And there's going to be some hard conversations. To go all in on football means you may have to cut other sports in your athletic department. To go all in on football means it is not going to be equitable rev share across all sports. To go all in on football means you may need to explore other majors for football players, and so those are hard conversations to have when it comes to, the other elements of campus, other academic units of campus, other athletic units on campus, other extracurricular units on campus. But those are the level of conversations it is going to take to really come to a conclusion here, because I completely agree with you, Will. When you talk about the number one public university in the world, when you talk about the campus that UCLA has, the alumni network that UCLA has, the academics, the education, and a history of football up until the late 90s, and a school, Will, right now, top 10 in terms of players to the NFL all time, top 15. There's a precedence there, and so when you think about UCLA football, particularly 2000 onwards, you have to decide. And you have a new Chancellor Frank, who's a phenomenal leader. Everyone just loves him so much. Chancellor Frank is going to have to decide how much of a priority this is going to be, because what we saw last night, Will, not to be overly doom and gloom, was a program and a university that doesn't think this is that big a priority. Because if you can allow not just an opposing team to come in to the Rose Bowl and win by 33 in the way that they did on opening night, but also all of the elements that led up to that, and the fact that you're probably outnumbered at the stadium, what it is revealing is
it's an embarrassment.
The emphasis is just not there right now. And this was a Rose Bowl that was sold out 75, 80,000 in the early Mora years, and certainly sold out 75, 80, 85,000 back in the 90s and the 80s. You always had those games where there was a dip in the audience, but there were games where there was 80, 85, 90,000 at the Rose Bowl. And so this alumni community, these fans, they deserve better. They've done the things that they need to do to show up, but you have to give them a reason. And last night was not a reason whatsoever. And so I think the urgency now has to dial up. DeShaun Foster now 5-8. We talked about year one really not counting, just given the fact that he came in here. But now the clock begins here. The urgency has to begin. Martin Jarman has to sort of roll up his sleeves and get innovative. DeShaun Foster is going to have to roll up his sleeves and get innovative. And they're going to have to sort of go through this, understanding that, and I really love DeShaun, but the fact that he's sort of alienated the media, traditional media, the LA Times, Southern California News Group, like he's not going to get any favors or any friends over the next few weeks and the next few months when you start taking money out of people's pockets, when you start taking eyeballs out of media views. So he better strap up, put his big boy pants on, because this is going to be some tough sledding here these next few weeks. And I think the thing that makes me so sad is this is the time, Will, when optimism should be the highest. It's late August, early September. The dreams can be huge. The dreams of a double-digit win season, the dreams of a college football playoff appearance, the dreams of potentially a Heisman finalist at quarterback can be as grandiose as you want them to be. That is the beauty of being a fan of college football for your team, particularly at this time of year. And I feel in one night, opening night, all of those dreams and all of that energy has been sucked away. And now we're coming from a very much of a place of a deficit mindset to crawl ourselves out of this season. But Thriller, hopefully brighter days ahead. You and I bleed this program very deeply. And fans, stay with us. You know, it's the ebbs and the flows. There is a reprieve here coming with the schedule with UNLV, New Mexico, Northwestern. Thriller and I will have it all covered for you, particularly that UNLV game. We'll preview it. We'll get into it. But we got to sort of lick our wounds here these next couple of days. And Thriller, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm looking at leadership, man. You know, from the coaching staff to the athletic director to everything going on there, to Julio Frank. Make it a priority. If you want this to be something, let us know. If you don't want this to be something, give us the green light so we don't have to go our Saturdays making an effort to go to the Rose Bowl across town. Because that's how it reflected last night. That's how it reflected last night, just with how unprepared this team was in that kind of environment. So, you know, I'm at a loss for words of what we saw last night. You know, I'm bitter. I'm angry at what happened. And we need to see some tangible improvement or this could get ugly really fast. So I hate to be the doom and gloom guy, but that's the reality of what we saw, you know, and unless you address those problems, they don't get better. So we have to talk about the problems and find ways to fix them so they can ultimately get better.
Absolutely. Well said, Will. You can't just have the goody-goody conversations all the time. You have to have the tough conversations. That's what it means to be a Bruin family. That's what it means to build true connection and true relationships. Well, fans, stay with us. It's only one game. Feels like more than a game, but we'll be back in a few days to break down UNLV and get our heads back above water. Continue to hit that like and subscribe button, LAFB fam. We need your support now more than ever to continue to build this content because we bleed UCLA. We bleed the blue and gold for our beloved mighty Bruins. We'll see you in a few days. Have a wonderful and safe Labor Day weekend. And it might be a little bit harder, but never be unrelenting and be loud, be proud, be passionate Bruins. And now more than ever, fours up forever.